Welcome back. As you can see, today I'm outside trying to enjoy some nice weather and some sunshine. So, hopefully, after you get done with all your schoolwork today, you can also get outside for some fresh air and some sunshine. Today, we're going to be going over Chapter 6 in Animal Farm. And by now, you should have read Chapter 6, and you also should have completed your questions in the Google Classroom. Some topics that we'll cover for Chapter 6. Like always, we'll be going over some literary terms. And today, we're going to focus on conflict, theme, and symbol in the chapter. We're going to go over some of the plot events in Chapter 6, and we're also going to be digging deeper, returning to those concepts from yesterday of revisionist history and gaslighting, and touching on some more propaganda techniques. So, first, the literary terms. Conflict, you know what conflict is. It is a struggle between two opposing forces, and conflict is also what keeps the story interesting. It's what drives the plot. One of the conflicts that arise in this chapter that's going to have consequences going forward is we have a conflict with nature. A giant storm happens in the chapter and it takes out the windmill and sets back everybody's progress. So, nature is pretty hostile towards the farm. You could say that nature is inimical. It's uncooperative, and it is certainly causing even more conflict. And of course, we have conflict between characters that's arising as well. But specifically in this chapter, nature, the storm, and the windmill are a source of conflict. Again, we have our theme. It is continuing to develop. And the theme is the universal message of a story. And the theme in chapter 6, like the previous chapters, is the importance of education, how essential education and the acquisition of knowledge and information is, and the consequences of being uneducated. And lastly, we are still focusing on symbol. And again, a symbol is an object or an idea that functions independently, but also has a deeper meaning in and of itself and beyond itself. So the symbol in this chapter is the windmill, and again, the windmill is a symbol of power in the story. So the events, there's a whole lot that happens in chapter 6. We are going to touch on way more events right now than any previous chapter. Kicking off the chapter, the animals, they're working really hard. They're working harder than ever. They're continuing with their labor on the farm, but they're also in the process of building a windmill. Their work hour has increased to 60 hours a week, or their work week has increased to 60 hours a week. For the regular human in America, full time is 40 hours a week. And also, they've decided that, previously they had Sundays off, but now Sundays will be a voluntary work day. Only it's not truly voluntary, because if one decides not to work on Sunday, their rations, their food source, is decreased by 50%. So the animals are essentially forced into working on their day off. The harvest this year on the farm is not as successful as the previous year. And if you've been paying attention, we're now 3 years into this story. The first year was when the animals were still under the rule of Farmer Jones. And then the second year was when they were independent and had a very successful harvest. And now the third year, they're starting to struggle because nature is uncooperative. They have way more going on the farm. And things have slowed down a little. And Snowball's gone. We had that coup for leadership. It's forecasted that the winter is going to be very, very tough. And also there's not enough food. Not as much food. So there's going to be a problem with how much food the animals will have. The animals are really struggling with the logistics of building a windmill because they're animals. they don't have hands like humans do, so they have to come up with a whole new system in order to build this windmill. They do come up with a lever and pulley system, which is a primitive building system, involving ropes and gravity. The horses really take on the brunt of the labor. They pull carts up and down a rocky hill. Boxer is the hardest working animal on the farm. His two personal slogans now are "I will work harder" and "Napoleon is always right." Boxer has a bird wake him up before his shift starts to work on this windmill. He's putting in more time, more hours. Sometimes he's out there by himself, pulling cartloads of heavy, heavy stone and rocks up a hill to build the windmill. It's stated that the animals weren't much better off in Jones's day than they are right now, but they certainly aren't any worse off at the moment because all of the labor is still benefiting them on the farm. But we're going to see about that in the next few slides. All of a sudden, there's a need for materials that cannot be grown on the farm, nor can they be manufactured on the farm. They need paraffin oil, to burn in lamps for light, and you can use it for heat as well. They need nails to hammer into wood. They need string. They need dog biscuits. They need iron for horseshoes. They need seeds. They need tools. They need machinery once this windmill is up and running, and they can't get those things naturally on their farm. So Animal Farm is now engaging in trade with humans on neighboring farms, and they have a liaison in the character of Mr. Whymper, who is acting as a go-between between Animal Farm and the humans. The animals will be trading their hay and a part of their wheat crop and chicken eggs in order to get the materials that they need. And I want you to remember that Old Major's vision was that chickens would not have to sacrifice their eggs. They would be allowed to hatch them into baby chicks and raise them, because the purpose of this is that all animals will be able to live their full natural lives. When engaging in trade, they're clearly exchanging money, and we're going to talk about this in just a few minutes. But when Napoleon shares his plan for trading and the exchange of money, the animals are resistant to this because they still remember what Old Major told them about engaging in trade with humans and exchanging money. And as they start to rumble amongst themselves, Napoleon's dogs start growling at them, which again, now going forward, if you are in disagreement with Napoleon, you're going to be met with violence to control you. And the dogs are certainly carrying out his violent plan. Squealer begins propagandizing Napoleon's messages immediately, with the necessity of engaging in trade and exchanging money. He spins everything in Napoleon's favor. Remember, it was stated earlier on in the book that Squealer has the ability to turn black into white. He's very persuasive. He is very manipulative. He tells them that there was never a resolution that Old Major suggested about money and trade. Snowball is the reason that they believe this to be so, and Snowball circulated lies on the farm. Snowball was the enemy, and he tells them that they're dreaming, that they are making this up, that it's a falsehood, and he asked them if any of them recorded it and wrote it down. So he is gaslighting those animals, and he is practicing revisionist history. He knows well and certain that those were the things that Old Major wanted, and he is spinning it in favor of Napoleon. The humans have started calling Animal Farm by its proper name, which is Animal Farm. When Mr. Jones was in charge of it, it was Manor Farm. But they're still very critical, and they don't anticipate Animal Farm being wildly successful. And they're also very critical of the windmill and kind of mocking the process and the time it takes to assemble the windmill. And suddenly, things in this chapter start to unravel very quickly. The pigs, who have elevated themselves in terms of status among the other animals, they move into the farmhouse. And when we do flip back to chapter 1, in Old Major's vision, he tells them quite clearly that no animal must ever live in a house, that no animal should sleep in a bed, that no animal should ever touch money, and that no animal should ever engage in trade. And lo and behold, now the pigs have not just moved into the house, but they are sleeping in beds. The 7 commandments that they wrote on the barn wall stated clearly in writing, no animal shall sleep in a bed. It was said that these 7 commandments of animalism, they were unalterable, meaning they could never be changed. And, Clover and Muriel the goat, they remember there was a commandment that no animal shall ever sleep in a bed. So Clover asked Muriel to look at the barn wall and to read for her what the commandment says. And now the commandment says, no animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets. So the commandment has been altered. There are new words written on the wall, and it is in favor of what the pigs want. And you know, here we have the consequence of not being able to read, of not being educated, because had the animals been able to read, they would have seen that these things are changing and they would have had proof. But remember, they didn't want to read, they trusted the pigs, and now the pigs are taking full advantage of their elevated status because of their knowledge and their ability. And now the pigs are oppressing the other animals. So, as they're reading the changed commandments, Squealer passes by them and he is flanked by 2 of the dogs, and he has a conversation with Muriel and Clover, and he tells them this is a necessity. Well, first of all, it never said that the pigs couldn't sleep in a house or sleep in a bed. It said with sheets. And this is necessary because the pigs are the brain workers and they need full rest and they need to be comfortable. And if the pigs aren't comfortable and well rested and using their brains, then Farmer Jones will come back. So, right off the bat, he again is employing fear and bad logic to try to justify what the pigs are doing. And they're also going to start sleeping in for an extra hour just to get some extra rest for their brains. So the pigs are not only, contributing absolutely nothing in terms of manual labor on this farm. Instead, they're the supervisors and the managers. They're also going to get an extra hour of rest, and I'm sure they're getting extra benefits as well. Come November, a huge windstorm happens, and it sadly knocks over the windmill that they've been working so hard to construct. Napoleon blames the fallen windmill, which is an act of nature. He blames it on Snowball and says that he sees Snowball's footprints, or I guess since Snowball's a pig, it would be hoof prints. Um, and he offers a capture or a reward for Snowball's capture. So he puts a bounty on Snowball. Napoleon tries to rally the cause to rebuild the windmill on the premise of revenge. We can't allow Snowball to ruin our progress. I want you to be very clear that Snowball did not cause a huge windmill to fall over. It was the wind that caused the windmill to fall over, the storm. It's unfortunate. Things like that happen, though. It's impossible for a pig to push over a windmill. So some of the questions that you submitted for this chapter Why is it hard to build the windmill? And again, these are animals. They don't have hands, they don't have fingers or dexterity. So they, at best, have hoofs, and they have to figure out how to use, their physical features to construct something that really requires the use of hands, but they pull it off. They use the resources, pulleys, levers, but the reason it is so difficult to build the windmill is because they lack the advantage of hands and dexterity. The second question, is Snowball a spy? He's not. He is truly gone from the farm. He's officially left, but he is being accused of every bad thing that happens on the farm. And that's because Napoleon wants this divisiveness. He needs an enemy for his cause. He needs everybody to fear Jones and fear Snowball, because if they fear them, they'll be more loyal to Napoleon. The third question, did the windmill really require the animals working more and working more days? And it did, because they had to take time away from the harvest and the planting and the sowing and the tilling to dedicate time to building the windmill. And last, why does everyone just believe the pigs? And I think that's a flaw of human nature as well as the animal's nature, is that there's a tendency to be trusting, to think that others have your best interest in mind when they don't. All too often, people are being swindled and tricked, and these animals are as well. So, trust but verify is certainly a takeaway here. So, again, these are some really great questions. You should keep it up. I'm proud of you for sticking with it and continuing to read and doing the work. We're going to dig a little deeper now into chapter 6. Again, I want to touch on the revisionist history that's happening in the chapter, as well as gaslighting. In terms of revisionist history, this is when Squealer has altered the commandments. And he at first said no animal shall sleep in a bed, and now it's been written that no animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets. And they're still propagating lies about Snowball and his involvement in the past success of the farm. The gaslighting comes in when Squealer asks them, he goes, well, do any of you have proof that this isn't what Old Major wanted? Did any of you write it down? Knowing full well that they did not write it down, and that they also are illiterate. And um, he's causing them to question their own truth, which is manipulation, and that's why it's gaslighting. And lastly, we still have propaganda techniques. We have bad logic saying that the pigs are brain workers and they need more privilege than any other animal. And we also have fear coming into play, where he's saying if the pigs don't get these privileges, that Farmer Jones will come back, and that surely nobody wants to see that. So let's look at your questions for chapter 6. Pulling them up. All right, number 1, you were given a passage to analyze. The passage says, throughout the spring and summer, they worked a 60-hour week, and in August, Napoleon announced that there would be work on Sunday afternoons as well. This work was strictly voluntary, but any animal who absented himself from it would have his rations reduced by half. Even so, it was found necessary to leave certain tasks undone. So your two-part question for the first one, how has the average work week of the animals changed since Napoleon took charge? And also, what evidence is there that Sunday work is not exactly voluntary? Because typically, when you volunteer to do something, there's not a consequence for not doing it. Number 2, what evidence is there that the upcoming winter would be brutal and cause suffering? For this, I'm looking for a direct quote and a citation. Number 3, who was the animal that was absolutely essential in the building of the windmill? Who was out there working the hardest and contributing the most in terms of effort and physical prowess? Number 4, what are Boxer's 2 personal slogans? Again, give a direct quote and a citation. Number 5, you have another passage to read, and then there are questions to answer about it. It says, no animals must ever live in a house or sleep in a bed or wear clothes or drink alcohol or smoke tobacco or touch money or engage in trade. So this is from chapter 1. This is Old Major's vision. And I want you to give 2 examples from this chapter of the ways that the pigs corrupt and violate this principle. And lastly, number 6, this one is going to be a few sentences of your writing. I want you to reflect on the things that I've told you from these lessons and what you've read from the chapters and from your worksheets. And I want you, in your words, because you're not going to Google this answer on the internet because I created it, the question, explain the change to the 7 commandments in context of revisionist history. So, how revisionist history has affected the 7 commandments, and then tie it into the theme of the importance of education. So, how is this all coming together and affecting the animals right now? We know that education is important, that's clearly the theme. So, bearing that in mind, the necessity of education and how the commandments have so easily been altered, how's it tie together? How could it have been prevented? How has this happened? And how are the animals being tricked and swindled because of their lack of education? So just kind of um, blend it all together and write something out explaining that. And then again, I want to draw your attention. Our work is still being posted in our Google Classroom. There's plenty for you to do. Chapter 6, Chapter 7, Chapter 8. Make sure you're keeping up with the work and feel free to get a hold of me with any questions, comments, concerns. And that's it for today. So today was a little shorter. Keep up the good work, everyone, and I'll see you tomorrow. And try to get outside. Enjoy this nice weather while we have it before it snows again. Bye.